Hey mammals! Today I wanted to discuss cosmic visitors, and not the probe your cornhole kind of cosmic visitors. As the title implies, I want to discuss chunks of space rock crashing down on our little blue planet. Specifically, I wanted to talk about human impacts with meteorites, and we're going to begin with the event that made me want to make this video in the first place. On August 22nd, 1888, at about 8:30 p.m. local time, traveling over the skies of what was the Ottoman Empire and what is today Iraq, a bright glowing light followed by a smoke trail was careening towards the Earth. When the meteorite was about southeast of Soleimania, it airbursted, creating a large explosion, a damaging shockwave, and sending several meteorite fragments falling to the Earth below. According to witnesses, for about 10 minutes, these small meteorite fragments pelted an area just northwest of Soleimania. Several villages were affected. There was property damage to homes and crops, and 2 people were struck by the meteorite fragments. One was killed, and one was seriously injured, later reported as being permanently paralyzed. Pieces of the fallen meteorite were found on nearby hilltops. How do we know all of this actually happened? Well, the authorities and officials in the area actually properly documented everything. So let's have a look at those documentations. In 2020, researchers in Turkey found a couple interesting documents. They found these documents in the, let's see if I can get this right, General Directorate of State Archives of the Presidency of the Republic of Turkey. Quite a mouthful. Anyway, these documents that they found describing the meteorite event were about 130 years old, and they were written in an older Ottoman Turkish language. This older Ottoman Turkish apparently has both Arabic and Persian mixed in it, making it extremely hard to translate, and I'll take their word for it since I don't know any Turkish, Arabic, or Persian. It's believed that these documents remained undiscovered for so long just because of their older language that not really anybody knows these days. The researchers ended up having to do a word-by-word translation, first into Turkish and then later into English to make it more accessible to a broader range of people. 4 documents total were found that describe the meteorite event thus far, and we'll start with document 1. Document 1 stated that on September 13th, 1888, the governor of Mosul province, Mustafa Faik, sent out a letter about 2 weeks after the event, describing the event, including what witnesses said the direction the meteorite traveled in, descriptions of the meteorite itself, and the damage the meteorite caused. The document was sent to the Ottoman government to inform the Sultan, the ruler of the Ottoman Empire, on what happened and how the governor should handle things. The Sultan at the time being Abdul Hamid II. The letter arrived in the capital by October 8th, almost a month after it was sent. The capital at the time of the Ottoman Empire was Constantinople, which today is Istanbul, Turkey. Next we have document 2, where a one Ahmed Munir Pasha wrote the information from document 1 in a summary and included the request for the Sultan to provide guidance to the governor on a new document, which was then sent directly to the Sultan on October 9th, a day after it arrived in the capital. Unfortunately, at the time of me making this video, no documents describing what the Sultan's response was have been found or translated. So we don't know what the Sultan thought of this whole event, but there's a couple more documents left to go over. Document 3 is another summary of the event, and mentions that Ahmed sent a piece of the meteorite to Grand Vizier Mohammed Kamil on October 18th, 1888. At this time, I can't find any confirmations of where that piece of meteorite has gone, if it's at a museum, if it was lost to time, or anything like that, but researchers are still currently looking for that very important piece of evidence. The 4th and final document is a map officials made showing the approximate direction the meteorite was traveling Abouts where it probably airbursted, and then an X on the map showing where fragments landed and killed that man and injured the other. Pretty cool. Well, not that people dying, just that they actually had these very detailed documentation of the whole event. With all the government documentation regarding this event, it's regarded as the only confirmed fatality by meteorite. There definitely have been other run-ins with meteorites by people. They're just not all confirmed, and not all of them have been fatal. Let's discuss another confirmed impact by meteorite. On November 30th, 1954, in the early afternoon, a meteorite was traveling over the skies of the southern United States. This meteorite was giving off a reddish glow, and as it flew over Sylacauga, Alabama, it exploded, sending 3 known chunks tumbling to the earth below. While this was going on, a little northwest of Sylacauga, we have Oak Grove, Alabama, where 34-year-old Ann Hodges was just relaxing in her home when suddenly one of the chunks of meteorite, weighing about 8.5 pounds, came crashing through her ceiling, bouncing off of a large wooden radio, before finally smacking into her as she was laying on the couch. She was struck in the upper left thigh area and I believe her left hand. She ended up with a very large and nasty-looking bruise on her upper thigh area. And aside from the bruise, she was basically unharmed. She didn't consider her injury severe enough to go to the hospital, and apparently she could even walk around after it happened. Her mother was also apparently in the house, and they didn't know what happened at first because there was a lot of smoke going on, and I guess Anne was probably in a bit of shock. I think they thought that part of the home had collapsed and just didn't know what happened up until Anne noticed a large black rock sitting in the living room floor. And at that point, she put 2 and 2 together. She contacted authorities, and later her husband came home and she told him that she had a bit of an exciting day. Now, despite her minor physical injuries, her mental health had actually suffered greatly, to the point where she struggled to sleep that night, and the following day she ended up checking herself into the hospital because of the distress she was still feeling from this incident. And she would end up becoming a bit of a local celebrity after all this craziness happened. But what happened to the other 2 chunks? The second chunk landed somewhere north of Anne's home, where it was found by a guy who would later sell it for a good amount of money. And then the third chunk apparently landed a little northwest in Childersburg. 2 of the chunks, the one found by the guy that sold it for good money, I believe is currently in the Smithsonian and can be viewed there. And the one that struck Anne is in a Alabama museum. To round out this video, we're going to discuss 3 unconfirmed reports, specifically out of China. The first event is described as taking place sometime in the 600s, where a falling star had apparently crashed into a rebel camp, killing 10 and destroying a tower. There was no mention of an airburst, and for a meteorite to take out a whole stone tower and kill 10 people, it probably had to be a pretty good size. There was also no confirmation if the meteorite killed all 10, or if a combination of the tower collapsing and the meteorite killed all 10, or if it was just the tower collapsing. It wasn't very well documented. Nor is there any kind of, I guess, further evidence indicating that this actually happened. Hence the whole unconfirmed part. This next event occurred in the 1300s in the Yunnan province, where several unconfirmed historical documents recount a falling star that exploded, sending fragments of meteorite over hundreds of square kilometers, peppering several villages and towns, killing several people, and damaging a whole lot of property, homes, and crops. Again, it's unconfirmed just because it's a lot of local areas recording these things, and we don't really know if it was one whole meteorite that exploded, or if it was, say, a meteor shower where enough of the chunks were big enough to hit the ground and completely decimated an area. The amount of deaths also wasn't recorded. You just have some historical documentation saying that a lot of people died, and you even have some documentation from the area when this happened saying that nobody died, or at least not mentioning any fatalities, which you'd think if you're recording all of this, you'd record fatalities, especially since property damage was recorded. Lastly, we have an event that occurred in the 1490s in Qingyang City in Genshu Province. A meteorite over the area had airbursted, sending fragments down, peppering the city, destroying homes and killing as many as 10,000 people, according to some of the historical reports. Others say that it was just a regular meteor shower that peppered the city and there was no mention of an explosion. Some historical records also mention that there were no fatalities at all, which again you think would be important if it actually happened. With the conflicting reports, once again, it's no surprise that something like this is considered unconfirmed. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. I found all these cases very fascinating, so I wanted to share them all with you. I hope you've enjoyed them and at least learned something. And for those of you that are maybe afraid now of being struck by a meteorite, just know it's very, very unlikely that it'll happen. And to probably not really help with your fears, meteorites aren't really the only thing out there that can kill you floating around in space or destroy this planet. Maybe I'll cover some more in the future. We'll see. Anyway, next video is going to be a paranormal one. I'm going to be covering an actual haunted house. Well, I'm going to be covering a haunted house involved in a court case. Really interesting one I hadn't actually heard about up until recently when I was just reading through some stuff. So it's going to be fun to cover. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, if you find yourself looking up at the stars and suddenly one is glowing brighter and brighter as if it's getting closer, maybe you should take cover.